Good morning. Day before yesterday, that is on the 25th of this month, the report from the World Economic Forum. A long expected report, awaited report, but an annual one about the gender gap. The gender gap in the various countries, and they studied 144 countries, whereby they sought to identify whether the gender gap has been abridged, whether the health of the women receives the same attention as that of men, whether they receive the same salaries, whether the political participation is the same, whether they have received the same level of education, and it makes a dismal reading. At the same time, it shows, curiously, a vast difference between the so-called advanced countries and so-called backward countries. An outstanding feature of the report was that 4 of the sub-Saharan countries are among the top 20 where the gender gap is minimal. Can't you believe it? And the so-called countries which call themselves to be progressive, to be advanced, to be enlightened, lag far behind. It says, imagine Canada at number 30, USA 47, India 87, Russia 75. And yet we call these countries to be the economic giants, to be powers. We call these countries to be the welfare states where the people are taken care of. Can there be anything more shocking? Before I come to the analysis in detail, let me say very clearly that all these efforts and all this cry of the gender equality till now has proved to be a hoax. It's amazing that the people in India gave voting right to the women way back in 47, as soon as India became independent. But in Europe and in USA and Canada, they had to wait till recently. It was a recent phenomena comparatively, and they received the right to vote. There's so much for their foresightedness and desire for equality. Now imagine the 4 factors that have been taken into consideration: education, health, political participation, and income. In education, we have seen that females are doing maybe better on an average than the males are. So there the gender parity is fully achieved, rather it's a reverse process. More women than men. Coming to the wages. On an average again, in some cases they are not, but on an average, they definitely receive less remuneration for the same work done. And in many cases, it's as high as 50%. Now, can anything be more exploitative and condemnable than that? That 2 individuals perform the same work, and yet the differences are as high as 50% in some cases. This shows this is a clear case of exploitation. Now coming to health. Health-wise, because of the biological needs, they need more attention. The biological requirements, the childbirth, the care of the child, that falls to the lot of the women. And we find that more often than not, in most of the countries, they are not at par. Now coming to the political participation. Unfortunately, the lesser said the better. In some places they have some semblance of equality, but it's only 2 countries in the whole world where they constitute 50% of the legislatures. Only 2 countries. So, the whole talk, all the high ideals, is coming to be a trash. And curiously, the report suggests one thing more, and that's all the more shocking, that till 2013, the gap was decreasing slowly but steadily. Agreed, it was not decreasing at the pace it should have decreased, but it was decreasing nevertheless. After 2013, it has started increasing. And the peak was in 2013, as a matter of fact, when the gap was minimal. After that, the gap has started increasing once again, and that is to the disadvantage of 50% of the human population. Now, what sort of welfare we talk about when 50% of the population is deemed to be of inferior variety, is not given its due, when 50% of the population leads a discounted life, as they call it. Just 2 countries giving equal representation. You see, Mao used to say that power flows from the barrel of a gun. No, it doesn't. It flows from the political power. If there were more women in power politically, it would definitely help generate more interest in favor of women, leading to real parity, real equality. And history has shown that whenever women have been in power, things have been better. And not only now, since times immemorial. Queen Elizabeth I was the time when the British Empire started rising, and at the time of Queen Victoria it reached its zenith, and Queen Victoria was the first lady in the world to be called Queen of England and Empress of India. Queen Catherine in England, Razia Sultana in India, Indira Gandhi in India, Golda Meir in Israel, Benazir Bhutto, Pakistan. So all over wherever women have been, Margaret Thatcher, again in England. So these are the few names which I am referring to. But politically, socially, and also from the point of view of military defense, women leaders have been really successful and great. But just in 2 countries they have a parity. Why? As I said, they are highly qualified. In education they supersede men, and economically they are inferior. You see, this is something which is highly condemnable. Now, if we have a look at the people, other countries which are successful, I'll just read out. Iceland is number 1 in the world, followed by Finland, followed by Norway, followed by Sweden. And the 5th country is a country which is often derided, condemned, criticized for being a backward country, for being an uncivilized country, for being a hotbed of civil strife. Rwanda. Rwanda is number 5 in the whole world as far as the parity is concerned. And yet we call these countries to be uncivilized. And then again, another amazing thing. that 4 countries of sub-Saharan region, which is the poorest region in the world, 4 countries from that region are among the top 20. Canada, as I told you, 30. India, 87. China, 99. And this is what we call to be the gender parity, gender equality. Have we bridged the gap? We have not. And if somebody says why, the reason is simple: the political power and the economic power. And if you look at the economy, would you believe that women, 54% of the educated women get jobs commensurate with their qualification? 54%. And 81% of the men get jobs commensurate with their qualifications. Again, another gap. Less educated, but more of them get jobs. So, at political level, they are much inferior, and at economic level, they are much inferior. You know, when I read these things and I see the politicians saying, well, the name of the mother should not be there. It should be, if not the father's name, but the mother's name should be there. How does it matter whether father's name is there or mother's name is there? These are not even band-aid help. These are palliatives to tell people that they are interested by doing these superficial things that ultimately mean nothing. The hypocrisy, the deceit, the sham, and the cant surrounding all this talk of gender parity shows that they are not interested in really ameliorating the lot of women. Their real interest is only in misleading them that they are doing something for their betterment. If they were really interested, things would not have gone from bad to worse, and after 2013 you are slipping down. I mean, can there be a more bitter and sadder commentary on the antics of the political leaders? And the most shocking part of the report, be prepared, is the report says that it might take at least 10 centuries, 1,000 years to achieve parity. What a forecast! 1,000 years to achieve what should not have been there at all. This problem should not have existed. You know, what happens is that people of my sex, the menfolk, create certain women, put them in the forefront and start chanting around that, showing that here the women are being brought up. But that tokenism is not the reality. The reality is that for every woman who comes equal to her level, there are more than 64% who have not reached that level. And even then she's not where she should really be. She's earning less than her male counterpart. And then we say that we are in the post-Renaissance period. We are going to have another Renaissance where God created everybody equal, so why should there be a differentiation? And yet, the basic differentiation based on sex. Of course, there are differences based on color, creed, and others. But 50% of the humanity being discounted as inferior, that is something which takes a cake. The report shows 3 major issues. A, the countries which are the economically strongest are not really careful about providing equality to women. Now, the economic engines today are Brazil, India, China. These are coming up emerging economies. South Africa. Except South Africa, which comes in the top 20, none of the three countries is crossing even the 60 mark. They are below 60. USA we have seen 47. Advanced countries. France comes in the top 20 but is below the sub-Saharan countries. So what is required? One thing required is that sex should not be a determinant for either a job or for anything else. Reservations would not help. It has to be a more positive action, and that is making people aware that here is a woman, she is equally qualified. Today the differentiation is that we say all the time that we want parity, and in reality we undercut that statement when we act. So what we need is an action to ensure what we will call it assertive action. The assertive action means a positive action without any drum beating to ensure that in case there are two candidates for a job, boy and a girl with the same qualification, then the preference will go to a girl. If there are two candidates for election to be nominated, they are of the same level, the preference will go to the girl. I'm not saying if they are inferior, give them. No. Make them equal, and when they are equal, when they are at par, give them a chance so that this disparity is removed. Today, the situation is a boy and a girl appears, and if they are equal, the girl is a bit better and the boy is a bit inferior, then the policy makers and the decision makers prefer to take a boy. The old paradigms of the mother not being able to give are still holding supreme. We have to get over the old paradigms. We have to get over the old prejudices. We have to ensure that they are not exploited any longer. And it's also the duty of the women themselves to ensure that they are not exploited. You know, there's a saying in Punjabi, which translated into English says that the biggest enemy of a woman is a woman. When a daughter-in-law marries into a house, the mother-in-law remembers her old days and doesn't forget them, rather she perpetuates the rule of that under which she has suffered. This may be changing a bit, but this psychology is there everywhere, and that has got to change. Gender parity is a need because the women are a storehouse. 50% of the human population are a storehouse of capability, of knowledge, which we are not using. They are also a more sane influence on the political life, on the social life. We are being deprived of that sane influence. Is it asking too much from the political leadership to stop being hypocritical and start being honest about the gender parity? Just saying that we believe in gender parity does not mean it. We need action, and today, not action spread over 1,000 years. We need to stop the reversal which started in 2013, put a dam on that, and make concerted effort to ensure that in the next decade the parity shall be achieved. And let's call the decade of women power. Maybe that would be the way out. And if you want to have a complete report, review, you can go to my article which I published today on this report. But wake up, bridge the gap. Let the gap be non-existent. That way lies the salvation of mankind and of the world. Don't wait for 10 centuries. That will be a disaster. Thank you.